So today we're going over the dumbest product flops in business history, starting with this one, the Dyson Zone. It was promised to be the future of breathing air and listening to things at the same time. But there was just one problem. People didn't want to walk around looking like a Batman villain with this thing on. And if you did, you would need to have the neck muscles like Bane as well because this thing was heavy. And by the way, it costs $1,000. And the battery life only lasts like 4 hours. So if you go out for the day or you travel, it'll only last like half the day before it dies. Just to show you how bad of a flop this was, this is their Amazon page. It only has 3 reviews and they're all negative. So Dyson isn't the only big company that had a futuristic idea that flopped. Nike spent 10 years developing self-lacing shoes, like the ones in Back to the Future. And when they finally launched them in 2016, they cost $450. Which is wild because I don't even remember the last time I actually tied my shoelaces. I just like slide my foot into it and it works every single time, and that cost me $0. Sure, they're cool, but not spend $450 to buy them cool. So it turns out that nobody wanted to drop half a grand trying to solve a problem that Velcro figured out in the 1950s. They literally spent a decade developing these, and they flopped. Like, can you imagine spending 10 years of your life developing something, trying to make it work, and when it finally works and you launch it, it turns out nobody actually wants to buy it? That must be so devastating. Maybe if they were 10 times cheaper. Also, the idea of having to charge your shoes every night is kind of funny, not gonna lie. But at least these flops actually make sense for the brand. This next one was completely insane. So you know Colgate, the multi-billion-dollar toothpaste company that spent the past 150 years associating the Colgate name with toothpaste? They figured, we're huge. Everybody trusts the Colgate brand. We should expand into other things. All we gotta do is slap the Colgate logo on stuff and people will buy it up. It's literally free money. So they made a frozen lasagna. Just looking at this makes me think it's gonna taste minty and meaty at the same time. Okay, but at least they tried doing something different. Unlike Bic for Her pens, they just got the pens that they already had, made them pink and sparkly, and called it Bic for Her pens. Alright, but to be honest, I think this became too much of a meme. Like, what's wrong with pink pens? Next up is Crystal Pepsi. So you know how Coke, Pepsi, and all the other cola brands are like dark in color? And if people see that color, they instantly know it's Coke or Pepsi? Well, Pepsi thought, what if we take that and we get rid of the color and make it clear? Now you might be thinking, surely there's got to be a bigger difference, right? It has to be like less calories, maybe it's like healthier some way. Nope, it's literally just Pepsi but clear. Yeah, so that didn't work and this flopped really bad because people didn't really see a need to get this over the original one. And also, a funny thing, Coke actually saw this and they were worried that they might get some more competition. So what they did was they launched a new clear drink under their name. They made it healthy and taste bad, so people would associate clear drinks with bad. Next up is Segway. This was supposed to be the future of transportation. This was meant to replace walking, but instead of replacing walking, this just became a mall cop meme. And the company's CEO actually drove one off a cliff and died. So while I was researching for this video, I actually searched up Amazon just to see what it's selling like, and in the past month they've sold 1,000 units at $550 each. So they're making $550,000 per month in revenue. There's no way you can call that a flop. So even though it's a meme, I can't call this a flop. The Samsung Galaxy Note 7. Okay, this was infamous for exploding. This was even banned on all flights because you don't want to be carrying a phone that can explode. So Samsung had to recall 2.5 million units and this ended up costing them $5 billion. And just imagine how many people didn't buy a Samsung phone after that because they would think it might explode. Speaking of phones, let me tell you about the disaster that was the Amazon Fire Phone. So this had 5 cameras at the front so it could track your face and show you like a cool 3D effect on the wallpaper, which is really cool, but then you open the phone and see what else it can do. And it's pretty much nothing. It couldn't even use Google Maps because they were using some custom Android skin that was only specific to this phone. And one of the main features of this phone was that you could take photos and videos of stuff and it would automatically search that product on Amazon so you could buy it from Amazon. Which doesn't really make sense because if you already have the thing, why would you want to buy it again but on Amazon? You already have the thing. So just to give you a scale of how big of a flop this was, in the first 20 days this was out, this sold 35,000 units. Now you might be thinking that's a lot of units, 35,000, wow. But in the same time, Apple also released their iPhone 6, and in 2 days, in one weekend, They sold 10 million. So this was a huge flop and cost Amazon nearly $170 million in unsold units. Next up is something that feels like a childhood fever dream, and that is green tomato sauce. I think this was released because of a collaboration between Shrek and Heinz, and they made green and purple tomato sauce. So I actually remember begging my parents to get some of this because, to be honest, those early 2000s ads hit different. So we got it, and this was the coolest shit ever for like a week, because after you get over the fact that it's green or purple and you can draw stuff with it because it's thicker than normal tomato sauce, the taste wasn't really that good. It was a fun fad, but just like any fad, they all eventually die down. Next up, we have breakfast mates. These were single serving cereal kits. So you would get cereal and milk and a spoon all in one box, and you could just peel it open, mix everything up, and have breakfast. So this was designed for on-the-go kids, right? But if you think about it, the only time someone is gonna have cereal is for breakfast. And if you're already at home for breakfast, then you would just use the big box and put it in the bowl, right? Why do you need a single serving thing? And I'm pretty sure that was easier than using the single serving kit as well. Plus, you're not going to take a cereal kit to school either. Imagine everyone's having sandwiches or chips for lunch and you just crack open your cereal. Oh, what? You forgot to have your breakfast, huh? Guys, Arav's having breakfast. He forgot to have his cereal at home and he brought it with him. Yeah, don't you know you're meant to be eating toast while running to school? Speaking of childhood things, do you guys remember watching Pokemon as a kid and seeing them use a Pokedex and wishing you had one? Well, now that AI is a thing, someone actually tried making this. Let me introduce you to the Rabbit R1. This cost $200 and it promised to be the AI assistant in your pocket. So it was meant to be something that could control all your apps, order an Uber, order some food, show you some Google directions, and you could also point the camera at stuff and ask it what it was. So basically just a Pokedex for real life. They ended up selling a few thousand units based on the hype alone. Except that when it launched, it could do pretty much none of that stuff. The AI just gave you generic ChatGPT answers, and it definitely could not open any apps or Uber or anything either. Also, I've heard a lot of people say that this is actually the most orange thing they've ever seen in their entire life. And when people found out that this doesn't exactly work as they promised, you know what the team behind this said? This is just the beginning. Yeah, cool, but you already sold thousands of units of it. Like, sure, you could do software updates and make it better that way, but your actual physical buttons and camera didn't work properly either. So now, thousands of people are stuck with a $200 paperweight that slowly gives you answers ChatGPT would give you for free. Marcus Brownlee even gave this the second worst review he's ever given.
They're delivering such unfinished products that it actually makes them nearly impossible to review.
The first was the Humane AI pin. So this was pretty much the same thing that Rabbit was trying to be, but it was like a pocket pin you would put here, and it would like put a hologram on your hand so you could use that to gesture and control it. But the thing was, it sucked as well. It didn't work properly at all. The battery life sucked, the AI was bad, you couldn't really control it easily, it didn't work. But if you think about it, even if this did work properly and there was like no issues at all, it's still more expensive and worse than a smartphone. To be honest, I think the phone's quite like an ultimate tier device. Like, how are you meant to beat that? It's already like a pinnacle version of itself. It's kind of like the paperclip. Also, I hate to say it, but they got the most boring and unengaging people ever to do marketing for this.
In fact, it doesn't do anything until you engage with it.
Like, they themselves don't look interested in this. Alright, so next up is baby food for adults. So in 1974, baby food maker Gerber decided to launch baby food for adults with flavors like beef burgundy and Mediterranean vegetables. So this was meant for people that just started college and just moved out of their house. And it was meant to be single serving food for adults. The marketing tagline behind this was, "We were good for you back then, and we're good for you now." Yeah, about that. It turns out that people didn't really want to eat meat mush in jars. It was such a bad flop that they pulled out from grocery stores in 3 months. Speaking of Gerber, when they launched in Africa, they used the same packaging they have for their US products. And that had a photo of a baby on their jar. But since a lot of the people in Africa couldn't read, a lot of the food companies in Africa would actually put the photos of ingredients on the package. So, yikes. Next up is Vio by Coca-Cola. So let me ask you a question. Have you ever gotten 2 soft drinks and mixed them together to see what the combination would be like? Well, Coke thought, why not try mixing flavored milk with soda? So you get fizzy fruit flavored milk. I've actually done this once before, where I mixed some milk and some soft drink just to see what it would taste like. It wasn't really that bad, but it wasn't better than having the things separately. And after a while, the milk started to like split. So anyway, this combination wasn't really appetizing to people, and this ended up flopping pretty hard. Speaking of drinks, next up is Frito-Lay lemonade. They thought, we sell chips. You know what's great with chips? Lemonade. We should make that as well. Which, to be honest, makes sense, right? But I guess because people associated Frito-Lay with chips so much, it just felt like the drink would also taste kind of like chips. Yeah, so that didn't really end up working out. Also, I found this comment that said they missed an opportunity to call this lemonade. Next up, we have yogurt shampoo. It turns out people didn't want to rub yogurt on their scalp, but I do know that this is a thing that some Indian people actually do. I know this because I've done this before when I was like 5 or 6. And I gotta say, it didn't really feel clean. Okay, now it's time for one of Silicon Valley's dumbest startup flops. That's right, it's the Juicero. This raised $120 million to sell a $700 juicer. By the way, the single-serving juice packets themselves cost $5 to $8 each. And of course, since this was the most over-engineered thing ever, you also needed to have an app and Wi-Fi for it to work. And they had QR codes on the pouch, so you could only squeeze the juice that was from their brand. And if you put a pouch from another company in, it wouldn't squeeze it. Okay, first of all, this idea is kind of stupid, because you can already get juice and you just gotta twist the tap open and pour the juice out. It's a lot easier than this. So anyway, this became like a huge meme when it turned out that people could actually just squeeze the juice out of the packets instead of having to buy like a $700 machine. Okay, next up is Google Glass. So these were meant to be augmented reality glasses. So the glasses had a camera so it could record what you're seeing, and they had a transparent display so you could see things like directions or any notifications. To be honest, I think these were ahead of their time. But people didn't really like the idea of seeing someone with these on and being filmed. Plus, they didn't really look that cool, so these didn't end up working out. And neither did the glasses that were inspired by these, the Snapchat spectacles. So these are kind of similar to Google Glass, but with these you can actually take videos for Snapchat. Unsurprisingly, these didn't end up working out either. To be honest, I think Facebook's Meta glasses actually look a lot cooler, and there probably might even be a future where a lot of people are wearing those. Next up, we have the Tesla Cybertruck for kids. So you remember when you were a kid and sometimes you would see these kids that had like mini cars that would actually drive, and you would think they were like the most spoiled kids ever, but secretly you actually wanted one as well. So it turns out that Tesla also made something like that, and it cost $1,900, and it was based off the Tesla Cybertruck. But then after it launched, it got recalled for safety issues. Now Elon said it's going to be back soon, but it's still not here. Next up, we have a rare product flop from Apple. It's the Apple AirPower. So this was promised to wirelessly charge the iPhone, Apple Watch and AirPods all at the same time. Now when Apple announced this, there was a lot of hype. But it turns out it was actually a lot more difficult to make than they thought, and they quietly deleted this from their website and this never shipped. Okay, next is the Meta Portal. So this was meant to be a smart display for video calling. So this launched when everybody thought that Facebook was always spying on you, and it had like an always on camera, and that just made people really uncomfortable. So this never really caught on, and it was discontinued in 2022. Apparently the hardware was good, it's just that nobody trusted Zuck with it. Okay, next we have the Peloton Tread. So you know the multi-billion-dollar smart cycle company Peloton? They decided to expand and launch a $4,000 smart treadmill. But they ended up having to recall it after a child died and dozens of people were injured, because apparently you could like get caught underneath the treadmill, and this ended up costing them around $1.2 billion. Next up, we have Amazon Dash buttons. So these were announced on March 31st, 2015, and everybody thought that they were an early April Fool's joke. So these were little buttons you could stick around the house, and you could just press them to reorder stuff from Amazon. So for example, you could have this button in your laundry, and when you're running low on detergent, you could just press this button to order more. But apparently people's kids and pets just kept on pressing these, so you'd get a ton of the same thing. And also, the prices of things would change and go up and down, so you might end up spending more than you actually thought it would cost. So anyway, these ended up getting replaced by Amazon Subscribe and Save. Plus, you can order stuff from Alexa as well. So you guys remember the hoverboards? Not the ones from Back to the Future, the ones that everyone was riding in 2015. Like for a few months, they were everywhere. They started selling like crazy. A ton of dropshippers started popping up trying to make money on this trend, and everybody thought that this would be the next big thing. It probably wasn't gonna be, let's be honest, but it definitely isn't, because it started exploding. Like they literally started catching on fire. Airlines banned them and Amazon pulled the listings, and this ended up becoming a massive flop. Okay, next up we have another one from Bic, the brand that makes pens, lighters and cheap razors. Well, in the 80s they were like, we already make a bunch of disposable stuff. What if we made disposable perfume? So they launched Bic Perfume, a $5 fragrance in a lighter shaped plastic bottle. Shockingly, people didn't want to smell like what they thought would be pen ink. They lost millions of dollars and never touched the fragrance space ever again. So you remember how Dyson made the Dyson mask? Well, they also tried making a fully electric car. So they spent $700 million coming up with a prototype that could compete with Tesla. But in 2019, they ended up killing the project because each car would have cost more than $100,000 to make. It does look pretty cool, to be honest. So up next we have a pretty funny one. It's the Panasonic Woody. So in the 90s, Panasonic wanted to enter the PC game, and to show that their PC was friendly, cute and approachable and that people should buy it, they decided to get a mascot, and they ended up going with Woody the Woodpecker. Also, to stand out, they decided to make it a touchscreen, and their slogan literally became Touch Woody. They even had something like Clippy called the Internet Pecker. Okay, this next one is probably one of the biggest flops in business history. It's the Tata Nano. So this was meant to be the world's cheapest car, and it was only gonna cost $2,000. They were trying to sell this in India, but the thing is, over there, cars are seen as a status symbol, and literally nobody wanted to be seen in a car that screams, I couldn't afford a real car, so I had to get the cheapest car in the world. Plus, a few of the cars actually caught on fire. And because the car was selling for so cheap, they were actually losing money for each sale. So yeah, companies poured millions of dollars into these products, and nobody thought to say, guys, maybe we shouldn't make fizzy milk. I kinda wanna try Crystal Pepsi though. Click here to see the worst fails in Kickstarter history.